one. Trial. It's a bumper.
Go by what the picture's already got on it pulled up.
And here comes the bumper.
Please fasten your seat belts and return them to the upright position. This is going to be a little bit bumpy.
Well, good evening, Monster Truck fans, and welcome to the 10th Annual International Monster Truck Museum Hall of Fame induction ceremony being held virtually here in 2020. We have got an action-packed show for you tonight. So many great things. You're going to be hearing from this year's inductees. You're going to be seeing some exclusive footage. Some of our former Hall of Famers have even gone so far as to put together some never-before-seen car crush action for you. And also, Jeff, big surprise for the end of this thing, we're going to reveal a brand new restored truck that no one's even ever seen before until this video.
Yep, it's really exciting. I think this is going to be the best year we've ever had. You know, really excited to get the ball rolling here.
Well, and as part of all that, we revealed last night during the Friday night event that this is going to be our final event that we do here at the Cruise Museum because we've secured a new permanent home for the Hall of Fame, and we get to reveal that here in just a little bit.
Yep, and that'll be exciting too. I think all you fans out there are going to love it. It's a cool deal. So.
Well, it's going to be a great show here tonight, and you know, for those of you that have been with us for the last 9 years, you know that when we come out and open up the big induction ceremony, the first thing we always want to talk about is how did we get to this point this year? Because, you know, Jeff, the big thing is this is not Jeff Cook's Hall of Fame, it's not, you know, Ross's Hall of Fame or Alan's Hall of Fame. It's a Hall of Fame for all of monster trucks. So the way we do this is very important.
Yeah, and it is. It's something for everyone to be involved. So we've got a nominating process.
Yeah, and so what it starts with, we pick 20 folks from all different spots of the industry. We've got former drivers, former promoters, monster truck historians, and we get these guys to sit down and look at monster truck history and pick their best 15 names that they'd like to nominate. So then we total all those up, and whoever gets the 20 most nominations are the folks that actually make it onto the ballot, and then we go to the voting process.
Yes, and then the voting process is voted on by past inductees and us board members. So, I mean, I think it's about as fair as you can get, and we're looking for overall contribution in the industry, you know, not just because a guy was real good at one thing, but a guy that maybe was able to do a lot of things in the industry.
Well, that's what it is, and you know, we're going to get right down to it. So just a couple things as we get ready for tonight's ceremony. Down here at the bottom of the screen, you're going to be seeing a donate link. That's going to be a big part of setting it up for us to have this new building and to build this permanent home for the Hall of Fame. So please look at that. Whatever you can contribute, this is for our sport and for our industry. So without further ado, let's get into our first inductee of the night.
On behalf of the International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame, we'd like to officially induct Dave Morcourt into the 2020 Hall of Fame.
Well, fans, we're excited to have the opportunity to introduce you to our first inductee of the year, and that is Dave Marquardt of Excalibur fame. Now, obviously, unfortunately, Dave has passed on and couldn't be with us here to accept the honor, but we're so glad to be able to have his partner for so many years and fellow Hall of Famer, Mike Nickel, with us. Mike, thanks for being with us.
Thank you,
Dave. So let's just start off right from the beginning. Obviously we did this a couple years ago when we talked that you came into the Hall of Fame. Tell us how it all got started, you and Dave going monster trucking.
Well, it all got started with dirt bikes, and Dave didn't like to lose. I didn't like to lose, so it was pretty competitive. And then he bought a truck, Chevy short bed with 35s on it, and I seen that, and I was like, I gotta have me one of those too, So I went out and I bought a truck, and we started a club called the Toledo High Rollers, and it was about 10 guys, and we all, like everybody else, who could put the biggest tire and have the tallest truck, and I mean, that's kind of what it was all about, but it seemed like those guys were more show and shine, and Dave and I were like, well, that's no fun. We got to use these things. So we'd go out and try to find a place to drive them, fields or wherever we could. And I have this one memory that we went out, and it was called the Toledo Four-Wheeler Track. And it was dark at night, and it was chained off, so we were trying to find a way back into the track. And there was a ditch. And it was just cleaned out, so it was like real square. And Dave went to try to jump the ditch with his truck, and he had 44s on it then, and I had a set of 40s on it. And he got both passenger side tires down in the ditch, and he couldn't get out. And he's just bonsaiing it down the ditch line and turned the wheel to get out. And all of a sudden, I'm back there watching it thinking, oh my God. And the whole truck spins around and the front end dumps down into the ditch. And he's just beating the snot out of the truck, trying to get it out. And I'm like, stop, stop, stop. So we backed up, and I couldn't really hook onto him straight because there was a ditch on the other side of the road. And I would have been going into it. So I hooked on him at an angle, and I started pulling him, and all of a sudden I looked, and I almost rolled him over. So backed up, we hooked onto it, I hit him hard, pulled him out, and my front end went down in the ditch. And I had a 5-inch body lift on the truck with a couple hockey pucks, so the body moved forward and blew my distributor off. So there I am, helping him, and he ended up having to pull me out and tow me home. So that was just a really cool memory of Dave and I.
And then from there, you guys start building the truck up a little further and start looking to go crushing some cars.
Well, we decided that a long wheelbase would be the way to go. So he had a short wheelbase, so he sold his truck, and we took that money, tore my truck down, and started to build the monster truck, the Excalibur truck, out of my truck. And we had the opportunity to go to his work, and he was just a CAD system was something that people hardly ever heard of, and his work had just bought one, and engineers before that just kind of drew everything on paper, and they were old school, they didn't really want nothing to do with this computer. So Dave was like, I'll do it. And so we would go over there. Dave got pretty good at the CAD. We would go over there on Sundays when the place was closed down and start drawing up the truck. So we had an opportunity to actually draw out and look at stuff and move stuff around and change things that other monster truck people really couldn't do it. They were trial and error. So we kind of got the opportunity to advance a little bit faster, quicker, because of Dave being able to draw the truck on a CAD system.
Well, definitely that. And so then now you guys get out there and start competing. And everyone who's ever watched, these trucks know that Excalibur, that's one of the trucks that was always going the fastest, jumping the highest. Just talk about you guys' approach from a competitive standpoint.
Well, we always seen the trucks, and we had like the smallest motor. That was one of the last things that we could afford, was an engine. So we had an LS5 that had 100,000 miles that we took it out of a junk Monte Carlo, and that was the engine that was in our truck. And we watched all these guys like Dale Wilson with the big, huge motors. They would go bonsai up to the cars, but then they'd slow way down and just kind of go over them. And we're like, let's just go as fast as we can, shift, and hopefully everything works out, you know? So that's kind of how we did it, and the truck stayed together, and so we just kept doing it, and we started clearing 3 cars, then we started clearing 5 cars, and then wherever we went, they were like, you're gonna clear 5 cars now, right, tonight? And we're like, I guess we kind of got into that, and now we gotta do that every time we drive the truck. And the truck really stayed together pretty well for as hard as we ran it.
For sure. So for you fans out there, one of the things we always like to do in these interviews is really just highlight those reasons of why this person is being inducted into the Hall of Fame, those points of excellence out there. And so that's what we're hitting on right here. So you see innovation, the CAD system, performance with just going bigger and higher than everyone else. And beyond that, you know, just I know you had a great relationship with Dave over the years. What are some of the other things that you remember about him that just helped him stand out from the rest of the crowd?
Well, you know, he just never decided that was good enough. He always wanted better. So, you know, we'd build something and it wasn't quite right, and he'd go get on the CAD and we'd redraw it up and we'd change things, you know, and we were just a great combination because he was able to take our thoughts and put them on the computer and generate a blueprint. And then he'd take the blueprint, and I was more of the fabricator. So he'd get this blueprint and he'd get his little scissors out and he'd cut the cardboard out and get this perfect cardboard piece, you know, and then he'd hand it to me because he really didn't even know how to weld at the beginning or torch. And so I'd torch it out and grind it out, and he'd grab it and say, oh, it's not quite right, you know, it's not perfect, you know. And so then he'd grab it, he'd grind it, he'd make it perfect, and he'd give it to me, and I'd take it over and I'd weld it on, and you'd never know the difference. I was like, Dave, it doesn't have to be that good, but everything had to be, you know. And even like Chuck said, you know, he'd give us these blueprints that were like the 3rd decimal point or something, you know, and he wanted us to do that, and he just had to have everything precise, like an engineer, you know, is pretty much what Dave was.
Well, that commitment to excellence, for sure, one of the reasons why Dave is going into the Hall of Fame this year. And, you know, what's kind of a neat theme about the Hall of Fame for this year is, you know, joining back together again. So, you know, we have, of course, Kevin Dabney joining his brother Kirk in the Hall of Fame this year, and Dave joining you in the Hall of Fame this year, and Charlie as well. So talk about just kind of how special that is now for the whole crew to be back together again, receiving the sport's highest honor.
Well, it's unbelievable that Chucky got inducted, and then I got inducted, and now Dave got inducted. So our whole team, Excalibur, is in the Hall of Fame now. And that's a very special thing to me. You know, it's complete. So I really, really enjoy the idea that we're all together now.
And just as it should be. Well, fans, Dave Marquardt, your first inductee of the 2020 class at the Hall of Fame. Well, now we're going to go out to a very special announcement. We're going to reveal our new home for the Hall of Fame coming up next here on the Induction Ceremony 2020.
Hello, this is Charlie Pauken from the class of 2016. I would just like to take time out and congratulate our 2020 inductees. Scott Hess, Mark Bendler, Kevin Dabney, and Dave Marquardt. Congratulations, guys. Also, congratulations to the 10th anniversary of the International Monster Truck Museum. Way to go, guys. We'll see you all soon.
Well, welcome to Butler, Indiana, the new home of the International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame. We are so excited. You know, 10 years, it was wonderful working with all the folks from the Cruise Museum. But, you know, Jeff, it's just, you know, we were guests there, and it was great that they were great hospitality for us. Yep. There's nothing like having your own place. That's what really solidifies this and really makes this long-lasting for the future. Tell us how this great deal came about.
Well, it's pretty cool. The city of Butler, which is just down the road from where my business is, called me. The mayor called me and said, hey, can you bring one of your cool trucks to our little festival we have? And that was just a few weeks ago. And we were standing there. I took the truck and we're standing there visiting. And I told him, I said, you know, we would sure like to have our own home one of these days. And things are, you know, we're hoping to be looking here real soon. And he says, well, what about this building we got in town? He goes, we would love to have you here. He says, what about this building? So within 2 days, I was here with him, and we were touring the building and measuring it, and realized this has got a lot of potential.
Well, and now, thanks to the help of some great folks who've been helping us work on the down payment for the building, it's official. We are going to be starting to move in here in the spring, and but that does not mean that we do not need the help from all of you folks out there in the monster truck world. Whether you're a promoter, you know, a driver, owner, if you got your own business, even if you're fans in small amounts. I mean, I know this has been a tough year on everybody, but if you truly love monster trucks, please help us make a home for the future for them.
Yes, please do. You know, we got some renovations we're going to have to do here. We're going to have to do some maintenance. The building is only 20 years old. It's never had vehicles in it or anything, so it's actually very good shape. There's not damage from people running into walls and stuff. But, you know, we do have a core group of guys, Bob Butler, for example, and Jerry Richmond, and Mike Vodders and Mark Peterson, and some of those guys like that have really stepped up to the plate and made some serious contributions, and we're looking for more guys to do that. We will have signage, we'll have areas to where you're recognized for your contributions, but please send them in and help us build this. This is going to be for the whole monster truck family. This isn't just for me, it isn't for Ross. We want this to be here when we're long gone. We want this to be for generations upon generations down the road to tell the story of how much monster trucks have brought joy to our lives.
Well, and then, of course, you know, the big work's getting ready to start here. So you guys say thanks to Jeff and all the volunteers out here from this area, because they're going to be doing an incredible amount of work to this facility to get it ready. But we'll be back here in the spring sometime for the grand opening. Tell us the plan.
It's awesome. And, you know, Scott Hess is going to lead up he's going to head up kind of the remodeling group. And, you know, that's what his history is in the house building business. So we already said, well, Scott, you know more about building than the rest of us, so this is your project. So, but yeah, in the spring, we're going to do a big Monsters Invade Butler, which is going to be a big parade getting us moved here sometime in the I'm guessing sometime in April, I'm not sure. And then we're going to have a big grand opening, open house, sometime in May or June. Be staying, you know, in contact and keep watching, and we're going to post those dates as soon as we get it figured out.
Well, baseball has Cooperstown, New York. Football has Canton, Ohio. NASCAR has Charlotte, North Carolina. And fans, now Monster Trucks has Butler, Indiana. We're going to give you a couple cool shots of the building and even hear a word from the mayor of Butler. And then we're going to be back at it with your next inductee here in the 2020 class.
Hello everyone, I am Mike Hartman, the mayor for the city of Butler. Just want to take this opportunity to welcome the Monster Truck Hall of Fame to the city of Butler. We're very excited that you have decided to make your new home here. I think it's going to be a big benefit to the city of Butler, and it's going to be a big benefit to the museum as well. We can't wait for you to get started and see where this takes us in the near future.
On behalf of the International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame, we'd like to officially induct Mark Bendler into the 2020 Hall of Fame.
Well, we're very excited to welcome our next Hall of Famer here in the 2020 class, Mark Bendler. And Mark, so glad you could make some time here to do an interview with us and talk about your induction. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Mark, let's get into it. Let's talk about all the reasons why you're joining the International Monster Truck Museum Hall of Fame this year. Tell us how this all got started for you, getting into monster trucks.
Yeah, we started back in basically 1983 putting the truck together, and it was a year after I graduated high school, and we worked pretty diligently on it. And thanks to my uncle, who actually did save a lot of the memorabilia from back in the day, he's got our wristbands and actually our card from the Indianapolis four-wheel jamboree from the Monster Corral and everything else from 1984. And then, you know, Eric Crush, hats off to him. He's the one that put that Kodiak Monster Truck Facebook page together and started posting a bunch of this stuff. But, you know, we just started building a truck, you know, and actually old Jeff Dane was just up the road from us, not too far, with King Kong. He was in Germantown, Wisconsin, not far at all from us, literally 15 minutes. So yeah, we just started putting stuff together. I seen him in Barefoot at Union Grove one time. Both of them were on 48-inch Terras, and one thing led to another. We just started building, and next thing you know, we're in a business. So
kind of as folks look back at your career and some of the things that really made you stand out, well, in those early days of building monster trucks, it was really a thing of bigger is better. So you had guys, you know, putting bigger tires on the truck, just trying to make them stand out more from the crowd. And you definitely really stood out. And when folks look back, one of the biggest trucks of that era, and that's definitely one of the things that really elevated you, you might say, back in the early days of monster trucks.
it definitely is, you know, and there was really no blueprint for that. It was just, you know, keep adding on, keep building bigger, doing whatever. There was no racing back then, nothing. It was strictly car crushing. And, you know, I think one of the things is that, you know, that truck still, people remember that truck and how big it was and the double stack frame and everything and how heavy the truck was and so on and so forth. And it kind of was, I guess you could say, iconic for back in the day. And even today still, that people remembers that big old thing.
Well, absolutely. And then talk about the progression, because it seems like right about the time that you got that truck built that was so tall, then things kind of changed on you and it became more about racing. And talk about how you guys especially kind of changed with the times as the sport evolved over those next years into stage 2 and stage 3.
Yeah, that, you know, we ran that truck only a short period of time. Then we built another steel version of it. It was kind of before fiberglass bodies were really coming into play. And we didn't run that truck long, and I rolled it over and we hung the 89 steel body on it. And about that point in time is when everything was starting, you know, Fred and Jack Willman and all them guys were starting to go glass bodies. Foot was going glass bodies, and things progressed and changed real fast. And so then we built another truck. It was still a front engine truck, and it was glass. And you know, I think that video is still famous with me and Digger crashing in Louisville. And I think we both totaled our stuff on the first pass, the first group of racing, and everybody's looking at us for the weekend going, what are you idiots doing out here, you know? I bent the frame on mine. He diamonded the frame on his, broke 3 ribs. And I mean, it was yeah, spectacular, I guess. But and then finally we ended up when we bought Rob's truck, when Rob wanted to get out, because Rob didn't live that far from me, probably 50 minutes down the road, and he had built a nice truck. It was fresh. It wasn't all, beat on and tore up or anything. And it was a good piece. And we made a few modifications to it. And that was our last truck we ended up with when we were finally retired and sold out to Tony.
So when you look back over your career, just for you personally, what were some of the things that was kind of your favorite parts of it? Was it those early days where it was more showmanship and crushing the cars, or were you really a big fan of the monster truck racing as things progressed?
I think the most enjoyable part was the early years, the car crushing, going out, doing that stuff. It was a lot more fun than the racing aspect of it, because when you were a racing aspect, if you broke in between rounds, now you're hustling to get stuff fixed, and it became pretty stressful. And you had to have more crew people and everything else. With the car crushing, I personally enjoyed that more, but if you weren't going to progress with the sport, you were going to be left behind. So just like anything. So we kind of, I guess, in a way, covered all the facets that existed in the monster truck industry. We started out with leaf spring trucks that weighed a ton, and we did in a way into the 90s, mid 90s, had a tube chassis truck that, nitrogen shocks and all that stuff, were blown alcohol motor, all the stuff that they're running today. Obviously the chassis are more sophisticated, but we kind of covered, I think, that whole gamut of everything. And, it was just, it was definitely time for me to retire and get out and concentrate on family and stuff too.
Just kind of looking back at your career in monster trucks, what are some of your best memories?
Oh, I don't know. I had quite a few. I think back when Gary Bauer put a tour together one summer, there was a whole bunch of us, Jerry Richmond, Dave Marquardt, and Gary and Alan Turner. We were all up in Canada for one whole summer for about, I want to say 5-6 shows we had up there. And that was a lot of fun, because during the week time, it was steel body trucks back then. We weren't tearing a lot of stuff up. And during the week time, I know Dave Marquardt had his boat up there. I think we got waterlogged on the water all week in between shows. And so we had a lot of fun doing that. And, I guess the other thing is too, that my wife and I, we got to do a lot of traveling. We got to see a lot of the country that a lot of people didn't get to do. Summertime was great. Wintertime sucked when you're pushing snow off the front of the bumper of your rig and you got to get somewhere. But you just sucked it up. You dealt with it. You got there and made it happen. That's kind of what it is.
So when you started out in those early days, when it was only a handful of you guys out there in the country doing this, do you ever imagine that the sport would grow to the point that it has over these 40 years, and that you would have a chance to then be recognized as one of the greats of the sport of monster trucks in a Hall of Fame?
I guess I never looked at it that way, to be honest with you. I just was a young kid that liked four-wheel drive trucks, and that's what got us going on it. But yeah, I never would have guessed that it would have progressed the way it did. To the point it has. It makes me wonder what they got to do next to keep this growing, because there are definitely some daredevils out there nowadays. None of the stuff I'd want to be doing anymore. Not my body wouldn't take it. But it's funny. I sit here and as I reflect back and I look at some of this, I will never forget these words. And Eric just posted a picture on the website here within the last month of a photo of me and a friend of mine and my uncle in his 2-car garage building this truck. And my uncle's words were to me, and he's since passed, said, "This truck will change your life. Things will happen." And I'm like, it's like he had some words of wisdom before the thing was even done. It was just a frame sitting with some axles underneath it. But he was right. It definitely did. And it definitely launched me into the point where we're at now, too.
Well, Mark, we appreciate you taking time to do this here virtually. Everything's a little different here in 2020, but the exciting news that we just revealed to all the fans is that we have finally secured our forever home for the International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame in Butler, Indiana. And of course, in the spring, we're planning the big grand opening event, and we look forward to having all of the 2020 class there so that we can honor you guys in person.
That is awesome. I know I'd talked to Jeff, and he said he was working on a building and trying to get things to come together. So I haven't talked to him since. So obviously things came together, and that's awesome.
All right. Well, Mark, again, we really appreciate you being with us, and congratulations on your induction this year.
Thank you again. I do appreciate it. Thanks to the fans also for remembering this old guy.
All right, fans. Well, that's Mark Bendler. That's your second inductee for tonight. Well, now we got something really fun coming up for you. One of last year's inductees, Cliff Starbird, did a very special segment with us a couple months ago just for the induction ceremony tonight. We hope you enjoy it.
I'm just trying to show it to people and kind of show what the older style trucks were. I mean, it's not really a race truck, even though we raced back then, but you know, racing back then was really slow. I mean, basically, if you just got over the car and finished the finish line, you did good. But I mean, it's actually a pretty dependable truck, 'cause I ran so many shows back then. I was, you know, booked every weekend for like all year. I mean, 50 weekends. So I use it a lot. So it's a pretty dependable truck. But you know, as soon as you say that, something breaks. You never know. But one thing about it, they're all fixable. You just got to fix them. So it's a really neat thing what Jeff and those guys have done down there with the monster truck thing. And I think it's good to let people know how it all started and where it's going and how far it's gone. I got to see a lot of people I hadn't seen for a while, and it kind of got me motivated and stuff about, you know, getting them back together and stuff. And the restoration took a while. It was really bad shape. It sat outside at my dad's museum for 30 years outside. 1990, I quit running it, and it's been sitting outside ever since then. But I didn't really do a whole lot. It's all just basically stock. I just basically cleaned it up, painted it. In fact, the motor's all original, the transmission, everything. Like I said, they've been sent out to my dad's museum outside, and they were looking pretty bad. And I've had some people on Facebook say, boy, you need to fix them up. So that kind of motivated me too. And I think it's a good thing though. And I think some of the older trucks need to start coming back a little bit so people can really see how it all started. You know, it's always neat to know how everything started. We brought it out here to do, and of course I haven't even looked at it since the car show. And you guys called me and said that you'd like to do some virtual thing for the deal this year. And I said, well, that'd give me a good reason to come out here and finish it up, or at least get back on it a little bit. And I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. This one's for you, monster truck fans.
If I get there. That's why I'm making all the skinny guys jump up there, because I'm not getting up there.
Hey, one of the new things we've added this year is the newsletter and the membership. Every month you'll get a newsletter for $50 a year for your membership. You can stay in touch. You know what's going on. I'm here with Scott Bryant. He's helping us with the newsletter. Tell us what you're doing.
I get to interview my heroes from my childhood and write articles on them and put them in the newsletter, and I'm very grateful for that. And as a member of the museum, you get to contribute to the newsletter as well. If you're building a truck or if you're building a model, we want to feature you and share you with the rest of our members because it'd be a great idea.
So it's only $50. Join now and stay in touch.
Fred Schaefer here. Congratulations to the new 2020 inductees International Hall of Fame. It was an honor to race with these guys. Mark Bedler, Dave Marquette, Kevin Dabney, Scott Hess, who was a team member and a good friend. Congratulations.
Hello, my name is Jack Willman with the Taurus Monster Truck. I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2011, and I would like to congratulate Scott, Kevin, Mark, and Dave for their induction this year. Hope you guys are all doing well and staying safe, and we'll see you in the future. Thank you.
On behalf of the International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame, we'd like to officially induct Kevin Dabney into the 2020 Hall of Fame.
Well, it's time to induct another legend of monster trucks into the Hall of Fame here in the class of 2020. And now we go to Kevin Dabney, one of those early innovators of the sport. And Kevin, thank you so much for being with us. And congratulations on your induction here into the Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm very proud of the accomplishment and happy to be here.
Well, you know, we've been saying one of the themes of this Hall of Fame class, it almost seems like, is kind of folks coming back together again here in the Hall of Fame. And how cool is it to join your brother Kirk? And now for all those things that you guys did over the years, now you're both in the Monster Truck Hall of Fame.
Yes, it's quite an honor, and it's been a while for me since I was actively in the sport. So it's brought back a lot of memories from the past. And I've got to relive that again, where I had just let it go a long time ago. But it was it's been quite an experience.
Well, let's just go ahead and get into it and talk about how this, this whole thing started for you guys. What was it that got you guys into monster trucks in those early days to start this whole deal off?
As with almost all of the original monster trucks that toured in the 84, 85, 86 era, they were all street trucks that had been morphed into larger vehicles, and that was the same with ours. And they kept getting bigger, and the fact that they became a monster truck was just a name that was I don't know how that name came about, but it didn't even exist when we started, most probably through the magazines. And at first they were just for display purposes and driving around very, very slow. But mainly in my case, it was mostly about the artwork and the look of the vehicle as much as the performance value of it.
Well, and that's one of the things that's interesting, in these interviews, we always like to talk about, the things that have made you stand out from the rest of the pack. And for you, it seems like innovation was the thing. It's like, just because other folks were doing things one way, you kind of always look to find your own way of doing things. Talk about some of the things that when you look back kind of stand out as some of your coolest ideas that you came up with.
Well, really, like I said, mine were more about the artistic look of them, but it was very, just a weird feeling to see Bigfoot 8. By then I would have been on the business for quite a while, and the trucks had all changed the leaf springs for the rough use of them. And to see Bigfoot 8 come out there with a very similar to suspension to the one I built, quite a while back, was very, I don't know if I really even let it in that that was going to be the new way trucks were built, and that my very first one was built that way.
And talk about those early days. What was it like for people, because they would see these things as trucks, but talk about you guys going out there with that awesome monster car that you had.
Yes, I don't know if the monster car part of it was really, it was really treated just like the monster trucks in the most part, because it was very similar to them, and I did all the shows with them, but it was the only monster car that was done at a level that was equal to the other trucks that were out there. So it was treated like those, but it was an experience more. You do all of this work, and they were all hand built, and they were all rebuilt several times to see it finally be out. The first goal is to put it in the magazines, and then to do the shows was not a goal. It was just something that became an opportunity, which we immediately chased as hard as we could.
And just talk again about some of those, technological things that you guys did differently, because, that's one of the things that of the folks that, really wanted to see you in the Hall of Fame. They look at your ideas as a builder and just some of the things that you did differently. Talk about some of those technological ideas you came up with.
Well, the four link and the airbag suspension, and I made the long travel shocks, so to speak. I guess you could call them shocks back then. But all of those were made because I was very unhappy with the looks of the giant leaf springs being hanging off the frame for a Camaro. That was very, it broke up the sight lines on it horribly. So I just didn't like them. The air rod was, I liked it because I planned when I built it, I wanted it to go up and down so you could get in it easier. And I had to build the long travel struts because, there was nothing even close to that length out there. And, but the biggest innovation I think we made, and it wasn't an innovation more than that we became aware of, it was putting the Clark axles on the 5 tons without making the axle shafts from scratch. The axle shafts were a really big problem in the early generation of planetary trucks because they were made with piecing two together, or I forgot how many different ways they did it, but they had a lot of failure to them. And when I was building my first planetary truck, it just by coincidence, I had a 5-ton rear end, front end right next to, they were both disassembled on a cement pad, and I had some guys working for me at the shop. And I said, go get the axles for the planetaries and let's put them in. And he just picked up the ones for the inner for the 5-ton and the outer for the planetary. And he put them together and put them in there. And then when I went out there later, I said, well, you put the wrong axles in there. How'd you do that? And we went back and pulled it all back apart and looked and said, well, I'll be darned. They interchanged. You could actually took a 5-ton inner and put it on a Clark outer. And that was a really big advancement on the machine work necessary to build them.
So what was kind of your perspective from those early days? Like you said, it started with the show trucks and everything, but as the industry evolved and, you had to get the trucks ready for jumping higher and going faster. And what was kind of your perspective as it changed in trying to keep the trucks handling the abuse you guys were throwing at them?
Yes, well, I was one of the trucks that came out with the Megaforce. I put a blown alcohol motor in it, mainly for the theatrics of it, and I had no intention. I wasn't planning to use the horsepower as much as you would think I would. But it was up in Cadillac, Michigan. We were doing a roundy round race where we ran to the cars and came back and went over them. And I'd never seen a car fly through the air, a truck fly through the air, and I hadn't used the alcohol motor really at any type of distance. And I was a little bit behind. This was the early days of just the most rawest competition. And I didn't even think I was competitive, but I didn't like being behind. So I really got into it. And that alcohol motor, it was next thing I knew, I was on the other side of the cars. And when I went over, I saw the cars were like 10 feet below me. And it was so funny. Bobby Z was with me, and he was shooting with a video camera. And when I got out, I was just like so pumped with it. And I came over to Bobby and I said, "Tell me you got that on the video," but the video didn't work. But that was the first time I jumped the truck. But there was a slow process of jumping, that led up to to where we're at today. It was a very slow process.
And just you as I know your perspective kind of seems more as a builder of these trucks, but just as a driver, what was kind of your favorite part of actually getting in there? Was it just crushing the cars, or did you kind of get into the racing aspect of it?
Yes, I like crushing the cars because it didn't damage the truck. The racing was I was competitive and I was interested, but as soon as I realized it most probably would damage the truck or allow the truck to be damaged heavily, I really wasn't that enthusiastic about it, but that's the way the sport went. And I did race for quite a while because everybody did, but I would say I never excelled at it, but I won quite a few races and I lost a lot, but I mainly enjoyed the early days when you went in there, and you got to remember when your first experience of going into a stadium and the floor with all those people, I was used to driving my vehicles by hearing the motor run. If you could go in there, you couldn't hear the motor run because of the crowds, and it's hard to drive when you can't hear. And so it was a surreal experience. You kind of the first 6 months, I just went through the motions. I never really was in control of the truck as much as just being part of the, you just get to you go in the stadium, and then 15 minutes later you go out and you really wouldn't remember much of it because it was, quite of an adrenaline rush to do that. But it was all low speed.
Well, when you look back on it now, it has to just be, you have to be so proud of the fact that, you were in magazines, you were, on television, signing autographs, performing in front of tens of thousands of people. Monster trucks, it had to be a great ride.
Oh, yes. Especially starting with the original group of trucks that first started doing shows. I really was blessed to have that in my life and those experiences, and that can't be repeated in the business anymore. Now you buy a kit truck and you're expected to perform at the very highest level right out of the box. I got to enjoy the very best part of, I think, monster trucks. Those first 10 years were the very best part of it.
And then, going back to that, I mean, could you have ever imagined starting out how you guys did, that the sport would become what it has, and that you would be able to be honored as a legend of this sport, 30 years later by being inducted into a Hall of Fame?
No, I didn't. I wasn't sure where monster trucks was going because of the way that the different large corporations were getting involved. But I knew that it was going to become a mainstream sport, or at least an established sport. But no, the Hall of Fame and the people behind it, I was really honored, and I'm really glad that they did that. That's a good way for the monster truck history to be remembered properly. A lot of people think that the super fast trucks were the beginning of monster trucks, and they weren't. There was a whole lot, 15 years before they ever saw the track,
Well, Kevin, just congratulations on, you and your brother Kirk. What an achievement for your family, being honored as legends of our sport.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, fans, we've got more coming to you here in tonight's ceremony, and we've got another very special segment coming up here in just a few moments.
Hi everyone, I'm Bob Chandler, creator of Bigfoot, the original monster truck. In my lifetime, I'm inducted in several Hall of Fames: the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame, the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame, the SEMA Hall of Fame. But I am honored and very proud to be one of the first people inducted into the International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame. Thank you very, very much. I would like to congratulate this Hall of Fame, International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame, on their 10th anniversary. It's been great, guys. Keep up the good work. Lastly, but most importantly, I would like to congratulate the new members, the new inductees into the Hall of Fame: Dave Marquette, Scott Hess, Mark Blender, and Kevin Dabney. Well-deserved, guys. Hope to see you all down the road. Keep safe. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dan Runny. I was inducted last year to the Hall of Fame. It was an awesome experience. Sorry we couldn't all get together this year for the 10th annual, so it's virtual. We'll all have a good time anyway. And being it's the 10th anniversary for Hall of Fame and it's Bigfoot's 45th anniversary, we're gonna take this baby out and throw some dirt for you. Congratulations, you guys.
Hello, Jim Kramer, retired Bigfoot driver. Just giving my 2 cents on the inductees to the 2020 Monster Truck Hall of Fame. Now, 2020 didn't do too many things right, but I think they got this right. They got Scott Hess, Dave Marquardt, Mark Bendler, and Kevin Dabney. Now, I know Mark Bendler, man, he goes way back. That's Pontiac Silverdome days when we used to run, and he was always a good competitor. Kurt Dabney's been around forever, built the first Camaro. I think it was Camaro body he had, the car body, which people really liked. Dave Marquardt didn't get run Dave too much. I remember he's very competitive, but he left us all too early. You know, he would have made a heck of a name for himself in this industry. And you got Scott Hess. Well, you know, all these guys, you kind of knew what you're getting when you run them. But then there's Scott Hess. You never knew what you got. Now I think I have to change that because I knew from Scott that I was going to get a hard run every time. And he was very good at that, very competitive, built some good trucks. A pleasure to run with all these guys. But Scott, back to Scott. I want to thank you for letting me be your crewman in Canada. I don't think I had a more interesting night helping you keep your truck in the competition. I can't remember if you won that night or not, but it wasn't because of lack of effort by about 3 different monster truck teams. And that's what we always do. We always help each other out. But Scott, good to see you in there, all you guys. I'm very proud of you. And the only thing I want you to do is be as proud of your induction as I am of mine.
On behalf of the International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame, we'd like to officially induct Scott Hess into the 2020 Hall of Fame.
fans, it's been a great show so far, and we're so glad to have the opportunity to have our final inductee of the night in person here, Mr. Scott Hess. And Scott, congratulations on joining the Monster Truck Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's a great honor.
Well, it's time to talk about the incredible career that you had that has gotten you to this point. And like always, it's best to just start at the beginning. So tell us, how did this whole monster truck craze get started for you?
Well, I was pretty much like all the early guys. Street trucks that just continue to evolve and get bigger and taller and really impractical to drive. And really what did it for me is I met Steve Dane in King Kong and spent a weekend with him, and I went home and got my truck up and decided I had to have one.
So talk about that process of that first truck. Did you have a background where you already knew what you needed to do, or did you just kind of learn as you went along?
Oh no, we had a local four-wheel drive club, and we did a lot of competitive tug of wars and weekend drag races. We'd go to the Silver Lake Sand Dunes, and we really were competitive amongst each other on street trucks. So we kind of learned early on what we needed to do as we got to the monster truck world, as far as dependability and springs and axles and not too much sprock, more durability. I think we learned that early in our street truck days.
Now talk about those early days when you sit down to put together a truck, coming up with the ideas for it, because you definitely had some unique features on your first truck.
Well, I always wanted to continue the show and shine side of it. I wanted to become a monster truck, but we had such a beautiful street truck that we did a lot of car shows and won a lot of trophies, and we didn't want to become a piece of junk once it became a monster truck. So as it evolved to the monster truck, we tried to continue that nice paint job but yet make the frame very tough from the trucks that we were able to see that was out there, which was not a lot of trucks at the time, but we were able to learn which ones had the more tougher frames and axles, and that's kind of what we started with to build from there.
Yeah, one of the things that's always really interesting with a lot of the early guys is you don't just have to be a builder. Once you build this truck, you have to go out and put on a show with it and entertain fans. And so it's kind of interesting. How did you, you've built this amazing, beautiful truck, and now you're going to go hit a set of junk cars with it and start having to put on shows in front of, thousands of people. How did you approach that and kind of find your driving style?
Well, luckily for me, when I started crushing cars, it was going over them endways, pretty much at a crawl, and then we learned what would work, and then evolved into sideways, and then obviously hitting them with speed. But it was really trial and error in those days because there was no internet, there was really no format to follow. You put the parts on and you went out and did it. We didn't test at home. We didn't want to break it at home, so we tested it at the shows and in front of thousands of people and learned what would and would not work, and just kept getting more aggressive, and wow, that held up okay, so we hit them a little harder the next time and a little faster, and before you know it, we're flying high and the wheels are staying on it. So that was how we just learned as things evolved.
Yeah, and of course, like I say, always in these interviews, it's all about why is this person in the Hall of Fame, and your driving style has got to be one of the big reasons why you're here. Because in an era where, like you said, a lot of the guys are just kind of go out and doing a crush and being a little bit too afraid to get big air in these big heavy machines, it seemed like no fear was just, aggressive was the word you used. And just talk about that, and then I guess not being afraid to work on stuff.
Well, I've just had a problem of hating to lose at anything. From a young kid, it didn't matter, dirt bikes or drag racing, or I just always loved to win. My wife used to complain I couldn't even lose at backgammon. I hated to lose, so I think that's where it became once the racing and the competitive side got more aggressive. I just did whatever it took to win at any expense, and knew we'd have to go and put a new body on, but that's what happened. We did it to win.
Well, and then also one of the big things, obviously running your own identity truck for those years, but anytime you have a chance to be associated with one of those, huge, just iconic names in the sport like Barefoot, talk to us about how that came about and what it was like to campaign that name.
Oh, that was a dream come true, and it actually, we got to be pretty good friends with Fred through just knowing him in the industry, and I bought a haul rig from him, and we were still campaigning Hercules, and when he invited invited me over and asked me to be part of the Barefoot team. We had just landed a couple of magazine covers, and finally the big promoters were starting to really call and want us, and it was a tough decision at first, but once I made the decision to do it, it was so wonderful because of Fred's knowledge and Fred's drag race ability, and his big motor, the Barefoot horsepower was unheard of. And one of the first shows I did as Barefoot was the Minneapolis Metrodome, and Fred said they like Barefoot there, and I went into that arena, and the crowd, what we got out of the crowd at the Metrodome was nothing I'd ever seen before, and it's just because of Barefoot. It was such an iconic name and crowd draw that it was the best decision I ever made, and become friends with Fred, and the knowledge and the things he taught me was priceless.
Well, and you bring up Fred, it's like I mentioned before, it's almost like a theme of this year is coming back together again, back in the Hall of Fame. And so now, talk to us about that first experience. It's kind of interesting. We're in year 10 right now of the Hall of Fame. You were there for year 1, and you accepted the award on behalf of Fred, who couldn't be there at the time. Talk to us about that experience, and then coming full circle here 10 years later, you yourself getting inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and at the time, I didn't realize how cool that was, accepting for Fred, because I had been away from the business. And Jeff had asked me to come, and it actually just a couple of weeks before that banquet. And so I hadn't really been around a lot of the industry and the people, the old friends. And now, after doing that and being involved every year and rebuilding the Barefoot truck last year, these last 10 years have just been an amazing chapter in my life to bring back all the old friends and the new friends and the fans of the sport. It's just, the museum and the Hall of Fame is just, it's just been a wonderful part of my life, and I just cherish these last 10 years. And now to be able to be finally in the Hall of Fame and with Fred and Jerry and Mike and a lot of my very, very close friends that I now talk to almost every day. It's just a dream come true.
Well, Scott, congratulations on the induction this year. And I know you and Jeff, you guys have been working on something pretty special here for us as part of this virtual induction ceremony. So we're going to kick it out. We're going to go outside, and we're going to check out some vintage Scott Hess action. What do you think, Scott? You ready to put on a show for these fans?
Oh, it's going to be so much fun. I'm so excited for what's here to come.
Hey, one of the fun things that we do every year is we try to have an unveiling of a restored truck at the Hall of Fame. And this year, Scott pulled it off. We've been working on this Hercules truck. Tell us a little bit about it. It's been quite an undertaking.
Wow, I got to thank Jeff 10 years ago. He called me and he found this chassis sitting in a field over out east, and we talked Jerry Richmond into bringing it to us, and we've been kind of talking about this day when we could get around to getting it restored. And for the last year, we've worked real hard. Since we did the Barefoot, we decided this one had to come next. And we got to thank, we have a lot of sponsors that really helped us participate financially and with parts, and Jeff's work and JJ and all of his family and everybody, Dave and everybody here helped us really hard. And we're just so honored, 35 years later, to bring this original truck back to reality.
And you know, I would have never thought that I'd get tired of painting shocks, but when this truck's got over 40 some shocks on it, man, that took a lot of days of painting shocks, and there's a lot of burgundy on this. Let me tell you, 7 gallons of burgundy paint went into this project.
And you know, that frame was originally military green, then it went black, then it went maroon, then it went barefoot blue, then it went back to maroon. Now it's back to maroon again, so all sandblasted and fresh. And this truck is, it's just wonderful. It's amazing. The reality of this coming back to life is it's just amazing.
Yep. Well, what do you think? Should you do a maiden voyage over the cars?
I think it's time. We got to recreate what we did back then, and we're ready to do it again.
So yeah, the first car crush, you just kind of crawled over the cars, and so we're going to kind of create that, and we're going to see how it goes. So
we've got original pictures from driving over the cars endways back in 85 or 86, whenever it all started, and we want to mimic that today, and hopefully we can pull it off and not roll it over.
Well, thanks everyone for watching the 10th Annual International Monster Truck Museum Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony. It's been a lot of fun, Jeff, and we really got to say a big thank you to all these guys who gave us some great clips and all the interviews, and it was a great time.
Well, we want to thank all the sponsors and all the guys that have come on board to help with our new building fund and everything, and all the guys involved in doing this TV production. I mean, this thing takes a lot of hours.
Well, and of course, congratulations to all this year's inductees, the 10th class of the Hall of Fame. That's a special one.
It is, to make it 10 years when all the critics said we weren't going to last over a year, it really feels like an accomplishment.
And we definitely have to say thanks to everyone with the Cruise Museum, their family, for hosting us for these last 10 years.
Yep, can't say enough to Dean Cruz for helping us with our vision and giving us the opportunity, and everybody involved there. It's exciting. I can't wait to see where we're at in another 10 years. I think it's going to be pretty awesome.
Well, and that's where we need the help from all of you monster truck fans out there. Drivers, fans, whatever you can do. I know it's been a tough year out there, but if you can afford to contribute, that's what's going to help us make a true permanent home to house monster truck history. So any little bit helps.
Absolutely, yep. And there's going to be information on the website of different levels you can give. Even just being a member and getting a newsletter for $50 means so much. But if you can give more than that, that's awesome. We would love your help, and even volunteer help. We're going to need some volunteer help occasionally.
Well, all that, and two, we are looking forward to being able to have a big gathering once again for our grand reopening ceremony coming up in the springtime.
Yep, in the spring, and we'll be putting the dates on the website and stuff coming up here in the future, and it's going to be awesome. The invasion of Butler is going to be the move-in, and that's going to be a cool deal too. We're going to have a huge parade, hopefully the largest monster truck parade in history is what we're hoping to do.
And get to honor this year's inductees in person. Yep. So we look forward to being able to see all you guys in person again. Thanks for watching. Have a great holidays, and we'll be back next year with the new International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame.